Hello, how's everyone doing today? I'm here with special guest Walter Block. They say the best introductions are the shortest, so that's all I'm going to say. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. That's a very good short introduction.
Well, people know who you are already, so I
Okay,
figure,
that's good.
and if not, they'll find out. We recently had you on a debate with Jen Helfeld. Jen Helfeld was able to do an analysis of his debate and what he thought of it, so I thought I'd give you the floor to hear your views on that.
Well, I was not happy with the debate. Uh, I started off being nice to him, saying how much I liked his interview of Nancy Pelosi, and saying that I regard him as a fellow libertarian. And I try to be nice, and I also remember he had a debate with Stephan Kinsella, and Stephan kept interrupting him, and I promised I wouldn't, and I assumed he wouldn't interrupt me. That was wrong. He kept interrupting me, and I counted, 5, 6, 7, or 8 times, and it's disconcerting, especially if I want to have a friendly discussion on this issue. So I was a little unhappy with his interrupting. I was very unhappy with the fact that he didn't go along with your ruling. You'll remember that according to the agreement that he and I had, or that the three of us had, we could each get an extra 2 minutes whenever we want. I got an extra 2 minutes somewhere in the middle, and he got 2 extra 2 minutes, if I can put it that way. And toward the end, I wanted my other 2 minutes, and he just sort of went apoplectic. How dare I? I'm putting words in his mouth, but that was the gist of it. Who do I think I am? I can't get 2 minutes. And he just kept going on, and I kept saying, well, look, we have a moderator. Let him decide. And he wouldn't shut up. And, finally he shut up, and you gave your ruling, which I thought was wrong. I thought that I should get my 2 minutes, period. Or if you wanted to throw a sop to him, then I should get my 2 minutes, and then maybe he'd get 1 minute. But you dirty rat, you said I could get 2 minutes, and then he would get 2 minutes, so that I would get an extra 4, and he would get an extra 6, which seemed unfair. But I'm a civilized person, unlike Jan Helfeld, and I was willing to abide by your ruling, but he wasn't. So that's the second problem I have with him. And then the third problem is, he cut off the whole thing right then and there because the debate was on his website or whatever, and I thought that was very, very snarky. So I was unhappy with not so much the content, although I'll get to the content in a minute, but more the process. And then I try to write him again and say, well, how about round 2? And I said, even though you mistreated me, I think it's an important enough issue that I'll do it. And this time you, Jan, can pick the moderator, not Daniel, but it's a buddy of his. But I wanted Daniel to have it on his show instead of, because he might cut it off again if he didn't like what was going on. And he kept saying, well, I want to ask questions, and we could both ask questions of each other. And I said, well, what's the point? Then we just squabble over whether we answered the questions. And so we went back and forth, and I said, look, here I have a format, and I've debated in this format, I don't know, dozens of times. A speaks for 10 minutes, B speaks for 10, and then B criticizes A for 5, or whatever it was. And I thought it was fair, and I kept saying, well, how about this? Do you want to do this? And he never really responded, which is sort of discourteous. I mean, he should have had the decency to say, well, no, I don't want to do your debate, but he never responded. Okay, so much for the process. As for the substance, look, to me, debating this issue is really unfair, because limited government is wrong. It's incompatible with libertarianism. If you believe that libertarianism has got anything to do with the non-aggression axiom or the non-aggression principle, you just can't square libertarianism with government. I mean, it's just impossible. So I sort of felt unfair, like taking candy from a baby or whatever. because that viewpoint is just wrong. I did say that, in my attempt to be nice to him, that we should, not really worry about this, but, first let's reduce the government down to 5 or 10% of whatever it is, and then we'll argue about it. But, if you want to argue about it, let's argue about it. And my view is, and I don't think he laid a glove on, not on me so much, but on this view, that the non-aggression principle is just incompatible with government, because government taxes people. Government uses coercion against people. Government demands a monopoly in a given geographical territory, which means that they forbid competition, which is another coercive act which violates the non-aggression principle. And his attitude was, well, we've all agreed to it. Huh? We've all agreed to government? Come on, give me a break. How did we agree to it? And he said, well, there's an implicit thing like whatever, somehow we all agreed to it. And I said, I don't remember signing anything. Did you sign anything? And he never really answered that. Another one is he never really answered the question of world government. He just said it was a disanalogy. But the point is that if we need a government, because you, Daniel, and I might, get into fisticuffs and we might fight with each other, well, I don't know, Brazil and Chile might fight with each other, or Argentina might fight with France, or I don't know, Australia fight with Russia, or whoever. So if you and I fight means that we have to have monopoly government over us to make sure we don't fight with each other, well, then it seems to me we have to have a world government to make sure that Peru and I don't know, Portugal don't fight with each other. And he just said it was a disanalogy, but I don't see the disanalogy. And then he kept arguing in a circle, like saying, well, when immigrants come into the country, they sign some sort of oath of allegiance, but that assumes that the government has a right to impose that on them in the first place, which hasn't been established. So I think his argument was sort of dead from the neck up. And the last one I didn't mention, and somebody wrote in to me and said this, so I have to give someone else credit. I forget who it was. I'm really horrible there, but I hereby give credit to this person. What he said is, look, let's talk about how does the government start? I mean, governments didn't always exist, right? At one time there was no government, and then a government started. So it means that there were a bunch of people. Well, how did it start? Was it unanimous? Hardly. I mean, you get 5 friends and you want to have dinner and go to a movie, and it's hard to get 5 people who are friends to agree on which movie and which restaurant. Can you imagine, like hundreds or thousands of people agreeing to set up a government and you get unanimity? No, you never get unanimity. And if you don't get unanimity, you're imposing on somebody who didn't agree. And when the U.S. government started, the 13 colonies, there was never unanimity in any of the colonies, and there was only 9 out of 13 colonies that had a majority vote. And so the whole thing, I think, is, as I say, dead from the neck up. He's a very good debater in the sense that, I don't know, he kept going. He didn't see this. He would just brush off all the points that I made and talk about what is it that there's going to be necessarily chaos and havoc and all sorts of killings. And my point there was, well, on deontology, it's very clear. Government is incompatible with the non-aggression principle. But in terms of how many people will be killed, given that there are bad people out there, it's at least an empirical issue. And in my view, I was relying on Rummel and Courtois and a few other people who said that in the last century, the 20th century, governments killed, I don't know what, like almost 200 million people. And it's hard to see how the Crips and the Blood are going to rack up 200 million people, and this is apart from wars, and it's also apart from highway fatalities, which I blame on the government. So I think I try to go over how, you see, the Randians, they say, well, if you and I have a fight and you go to court A and I go to court B, and what happens if the 2 courts disagree? And then they have this thing called blank out. Like we anarcho-capitalists have no answer. Well, I try to give an answer with the bandit courts, that if the 2 courts disagreed with each other, they would appoint a 3rd court to mediate between them. And if they didn't, they'd be bandit courts, and the bandit courts would have no, support of the people, and they would have to fight everybody, whereas the ordinary courts would only have to fight bandit courts, whereas the bandit courts would have to fight other bandit courts plus legitimate courts. So I try to make the case that it's not a blank out. It's, We have American Arbitration Association. We do arbitrate, like you were supposed to be the arbitrator, but he didn't respect you as the arbitrator. So maybe with him in the area there might be fighting, but I can't believe that there'd be as many as governments kill. So that's roughly the my comments on this debate. I gave the procedural ones and then the substantive ones, and I think it was very unhappy on my part, both procedurally and substantively.
I disagree it's taking candy from a baby because you're an anarchist. You wouldn't take candy from a baby.
Okay, I stand corrected.
But, yeah. My favorite comment, one of the YouTube commenters was, this debate was Jan Helfeld interviewing Nancy Pelosi, where Jan Helfeld was Nancy Pelosi and Walter Block was Jan Helfeld.
Well, that's very sweet.
But, you know, I'm surprised you didn't use the economic argument, which basically is, imagine two scenarios. One, where if you go to war, you have to fight yourself, or you have to pay other people with your own money to fight in your stead, versus a war where you can either draft people against their will to fight for you, so you're not risking your own life, or you pay them with other people's income. What one do you think is more likely to commit violence? One where the costs are socialized, sort of like victimless crimes. Imagine two societies. One where you vote and everyone has to pay for the law, or one, the only people who pay to enforce a law on drugs are the people who says, I think drugs should be illegal. Now you're going to see way more hands going down when the costs are not socialized. And I think that's the economic argument why there would be fewer wars.
That's a very, very good point. And if I had had more time, I probably would have got into that. But I was trying to get at what I thought was the deontological stuff. But that's a very, very good point, that there will be more wars with government, and therefore we need a world government. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Now, you had some query about the, what do you call it, the ethical thing and the good. He made that point also, and I think you...
Well, one of the things he said was, you know, the point of any political discussion is this isn't just we're not just saying, well, I like vanilla ice cream, well, I like chocolate ice cream, and we're debating what is better. That's just a subjective preference, and you can't debate what's better, vanilla or chocolate ice cream. We're debating ethical issues. What is the
in taste? What is it? Non-disputandum. There's a very famous word. I can't think of it. Latin de gustibus non-disputandum. In taste, there's no disputing.
Right.
Which supports the point you're making.
Right, yes. So the debate is not about what flavor ice cream is better, because that's a pointless debate. The debate is what is the moral... Because if you're saying ethics doesn't matter, then why do you oppose the state? You oppose the state because it does unethical things, killing, stealing. So ethics are rooted against the state. If it's not, then you really have no argument. Right? If ethics don't matter, then... Who cares that the government's stealing and killing from people if ethics aren't important?
Well, I am. I disagree with you, and I see that you have some sympathy for him on this, which is okay. Look, we can disagree, and you know, and we'll do it politely. I'm sure, not like with him. My view is I'm a very thin libertarian. I'm so skinny. Well, you're not really. I'm accusing you now of not being as thin as you should be. I am so thin you practically can't see me. Namely, I adhere to the non-aggression principle, and that's it. Nothing else. Nothing else. No ethics, schmethics, vanilla, the chocolate, nothing. Only the non-aggression principle. And my question is the government compatible with the non-aggression principle or not? And you see, Jan and you are thicker libertarians because you think that ethics has got something to do with it. Ethics has got nothing to do with it. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think that libertarianism is a theory of what is just law. And what just law is, it respects the non-aggression principle, and that's it. And whether something is ethical or not is sort of outside of that area.
Isn't just a part of ethics? Isn't just law a part of ethics?
Well, it's a part of ethics, but it's a very narrow, limited part of ethics, and I don't want to get out of that part of ethics and into the broader range of ethics where you and Jan seem to want to drag me. I want to stick to the very narrow focus of ethics, if you want, a sub-branch or a subcategory of ethics, namely, what should the law be? And the law should be, according to libertarianism, anything compatible with the non-aggression principle, which means we outlaw murder, rape, theft, slavery, I don't know, fraud, threats of these things, and that's it. So whether something is ethical or not is sort of outside of the realm. In other words, I put blinkers on like a horse has blinkers on, and I just look at the non-aggression principle and say, is something compatible with the non-aggression principle or not? Now, what thicker libertarians of all sorts say is that's not enough. And I'm going to try to convert you out of that. I'm going to try to say that that is enough. That's plenty. There's plenty of stuff in libertarianism. We don't have to go outside of libertarianism. We don't have to ask if things are ethical or if things are good. We just have to ask, are they compatible with the non-aggression principle? Now, here's the way I try to teach this to my classes. I look at the, what do you call it, the teepee or the tent of the Indian tribe, and I'm going to draw a picture of it for you. I don't know if it's going to come out on the screen too well. Let's see. The way I understand the teepee is that there's a very, very long sticks. Can you see it? No.
Yeah.
See,
you're a better economist than a drawer, but I can see it.
See, the bottom part of the teepee is very, very long, maybe 20 feet, where the top of the teepee is just 2 or 3 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
And this, where all the sticks get together, right there, that's the non-aggression principle.
Right.
And now, what are these sticks up here? These are justifications of the non-aggression axiom, and you have natural law, and you have, I don't know, Hans Hoppe's argument from argument, and you have utilitarianism, and you have religion. God said we should have the NAP, the non-aggression principle. And I don't really care, because I believe in specialization and division of labor in everything, and including political discourse. And I don't want to get into why the non-aggression principle is justified. I just want to start from the non-aggression principle. I'm a Hoppean, Hans Hoppean in this. I think that the best defense of this is his argument from argument. But I don't want to get into other kinds of issues. You see, the Randians are super fat libertarians, or super thick libertarians. They never call themselves libertarians, but to the extent that they were libertarians, they were really fatzos. They were, immense. Not only did they have this crappy thing about, what is it, human flourishing that Jan was trying to push on me. He would give you this case, well, suppose there was water and he was very thirsty and he was going to die, and it was not his water or whatever it was, or a cabin or something like that. Remember that
yeah.
case? And does he have a right to steal it, take it from the rightful owner? And here you have to get into act utilitarianism and rule utilitarianism. And this whole idea of human flourishing is a very, very philosophically weak justification of the non-aggression principle. Because look, one problem is the utility monster. Suppose you have somebody who loves to eat people. He's a, what do you call it when you eat people?
Cannibalism.
Cannibal. He's a cannibal, and he loves to eat people. Remember there was Hannibal the cannibal? He loves to eat people, and according to utilitarianism, he gets so much pleasure out of eating people that our disutility in being eaten by him is, very, very small, and therefore human flourishing would allow him to eat us. I mean, so from an act utilitarian point of view, it might help Jan to stay alive, Mr. Helfeld to stay alive by stealing some water or stealing some food. But rule utilitarianism, namely act according to the rule which will maximize human flourishing, well, now you don't have any allowance for theft, because then people are going to start stealing each other's stuff, and nobody's going to grow stuff, and everyone's going to start steal stuff, and you'll have, not anarchy, chaos. This will be very, very bad. So his idea of human flourishing is, you see, it contradicts another thing that Ayn Rand said, which is that rights never conflict, rights never clash. Well, here rights clash. This is my water, and he's grabbing it, and we have a clash of rights. And for a proper libertarian, rights can't clash. And when they seem to clash, one of them is in the right and the other is in the wrong. And obviously, I'm in the right if it's my water or my cabin or whatever, and he needs the cabin or the water to stay alive. But you see, the Randians are not only thick libertarians into ethics, but if I were to probe him and he would answer my questions, he would go even further. He would go further back up this tent that I've been talking about, and he would get into metaphysics and epistemology and stuff, because it all comes from A is A for the Randians. Now, Rand was a real thick libertarian. Like, she would start in even saying that smoking is rational, and if you don't smoke, you're not really a libertarian. And what was it? The kind of music she liked? Romantic music.
Mozart, no, Brahms is better than Mozart, right?
Brahms was better than Mozart. I mean, Murray Rothbard wrote a play called
Mozart was a red. Hilarious.
To sort of poke fun at this. I mean, they are the thickest of all. I mean, Roderick Long, is not thick at all compared to the Randians. They're just crazy. And Mr. Helfeld was trying to get me into this. Well, you have to get into ethics. It's not enough to do the NAP. It's enough for libertarians. See, like he was asking me, would I take the water? And I said, I don't know. And, he sort of, first I said, well, this is an improper question to ask a libertarian. And he, went apoplectic about this. Oh, you're not answering my question. And, yak, yak, yak. So finally, to humor him, I said, I don't honestly know what I would do. But all I know is that if I stole water and somebody shot me for doing it, the guy who shot me would be an innocent person and I would be a thief. So I don't know if I've convinced you that.
Well, I think I'm a very thin libertarian, and when we go down my list of defending the undefendables, I will show you how thin I am. I look like a Holocaust survivor, my libertarianism. So no, but libertarianism is rooted in that. Look, I'm not saying there should be a law against adultery. I think adultery is immoral, but it's your body, and you should be able to have sex with who you want. So I'm not saying that we should enforce what my view of morality is onto everyone. But I am saying that the non-aggression principle, the fact that you're using the word principle means that it's not completely separate from ethics, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't call it a principle.
How about an axiom? Do you like axiom better?
So it's either an amoral philosophy or it's a moral philosophy. And if it's and so I think it is a moral question. Now, just because you're only concerned with the morality in terms of the non-aggression principle, in terms of what should be inflicted by people, I agree with that. So I am a thin libertarian, but I don't think that just because ethics isn't all-encompassing, it ceases to be ethics.
Well, if you want to say that libertarianism is a branch of ethics, okay, fine.
Fine.
But I want to stick to that branch, whereas he wants to drag me out of that branch and say, well, is it good? And I'm saying, look, the only proper question for a libertarian is X, or whatever X is, whether it's adultery or rape or murder or ice cream, is it compatible with the non-aggression principle or not? If it is, then we accept it, and if it's not, it should be against the law.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you very, very much, and to me, the two biggest fallacies when it comes to arguing for the state are, if we're against government doing X, we're against X, right? As Frederick Bastiat says, we say we're against the government raising grain, the socialists are going to accuse us of not wanting people to eat. So one fallacy is we're against social public education. We don't want anyone to be educated. We only want the rich to be educated. And another fallacy is if we don't want something to be illegal, we think it's good. Like we're encouraging heroin use. So those are two very big fallacies, and I don't subscribe to either of them. I think drugs are immoral. I think adultery is immoral. There are many things that I think are immoral. But
not as a libertarian. I
don't think it should be imposed ethically, but I said to someone yesterday, if I ran an abortion, not an abortion, an adoption agency, all else ceteris paribus, I would, if there were other options, I would not give the child to a single parent or to a gay couple, because I think a parent should have a mother and father. now that shouldn't be a law. Gay people shouldn't be able to adopt. I don't want to enforce that on anyone else. But if I had an adoption agency, I would discriminate against single parents and against heterosexual couples.
Well, look, I discriminate against checkers and in favor of chess, but not as a libertarian.
Right.
And you have all sorts of ethical views, but not qua libertarian. Qua libertarian, if you're thin, and I think you are, the only question you can answer is it compatible with the NAP or not?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas once you start talking about ethical issues about adoption agencies and this and that and the other, and adultery, you're speaking as sort of as a citizen or as a philosopher or as an ethicist. Fine, but not as a libertarian. And I, if I have any expertise, it's as a libertarian. It's not as anything else but a libertarian or an economist, a different issue.
I agree with you on that. But like, for instance, when, if we were to debate, or when you went on Sam Sater's program about, they hear in their minds, you're a racist. And, what I like to say is, so if I support free speech and someone says something obnoxious, do I support anything that person happens to say, or do I support the right for him to say what's on his mind? You might, just because you associate with people just because you use your freedoms in a way which I might not approve of, doesn't mean that I don't support your right to have that freedom.
Yep. There was some very famous philosopher who said, I disagree entirely with what you said, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying. I mean, to extrapolate what you just said very brilliantly, we don't think that the government should have police forces. So we're against police. We don't think that the government should have courts, so we're against courts. We don't think the government should have armies, so we're against armies. No, of course not.
Well, what you have to talk to them at their own game, and I would say to one of these people, do you want the government to monopolize paper? And if you say no, you're anti-paper. Just get them at their own game.
Yes.
Anyway.